A widow's game unfolds as a gripping investigation into the murder of Arturo Ferrer Puig, whose body is found in the parking garage of his apartment. At first glance, the scene suggests a robbery gone wrong, but the autopsy soon reveals that Arturo's death was no accident, it was a premeditated act of murder. As the investigation intensifies, detectives begin to focus on a central suspect, Arturo's wife, Maje. Maje grew up in a devoutly religious and conservative household. Despite her vibrant and outgoing personality, she adhered to her upbringing and married Arturo. However, the marriage quickly turned into a suffocating and unhappy arrangement. Maje felt trapped, controlled, and deeply dissatisfied, but divorce was never a realistic option in her world. Her strict family values made the idea of ending a marriage shameful, so she sought escape through extramarital affairs. Even before the wedding, she had cheated on Arturo, but he forgave her. When he discovered she was still being unfaithful after their marriage, Arturo decided he wanted a divorce. This time, he was serious. The prospect of divorce was devastating for Maje, not only because of the social stigma it would bring in her family but also because she had signed a prenuptial agreement. This meant that she would leave the marriage with nothing, no money, no assets. Desperate and calculating, Maje turned her attention to Arturo's life insurance policy. If Arturo died, she would be financially secure, and in her family's eyes, a widow was far more respectable than a divorcee. Maje made a chilling decision: she would rather be a widow than walk away empty-handed. She began manipulating the men she was having affairs with, painting Arturo as a violent, abusive husband. Her first attempt to carry out the plan involved Andres, one of her lovers. She tried to convince him that Arturo's abuse made her fear for her life. Andres, though concerned for her, refused to take part in anything violent. Instead, he suggested she report the abuse to the police and even offered to testify for her. When that didn't work, Maje turned to another man, Salva, a colleague from the hospital where she worked. Unlike Andres, Salva was already obsessed with Maje. Though she had initially ignored his advances, she began encouraging his affections, knowing she could manipulate him into doing what she wanted. Maje played the same narrative with Salva: Arturo was abusive, dangerous, and the only way she could be free to be with Salva was if her husband were dead. Salva, hopelessly infatuated and emotionally unstable, believed her. He told friends he would do anything to keep Maje in his life. Under her manipulation, he agreed to kill Arturo. On the day of the murder, Salva lay in wait in the parking garage. Armed with a kitchen knife, he attacked and killed Arturo. Maje had provided him with the key to the garage and other details necessary to carry out the crime. The murder weapon was later discovered buried on Salva's property, providing further evidence that the killing was planned. Suspicion had been growing around Maje, particularly for Inspector Eva, who was leading the investigation. Eva had a gut feeling that Maje was involved but lacked the evidence to prove it. She obtained a warrant to tap Maje's phone, hoping to catch her in a slip. Months went by, but Maje remained cautious and never said anything directly incriminating. However, Eva's team remained persistent. They decided to use psychological tactics to get a confession. With the help of Arturo's brother, they planted the idea that a suspect had been found and that an arrest was imminent. The plan worked. Maje, panicked and believing the walls were closing in, called Salva. That phone call provided the final piece of the puzzle. With incriminating recordings in hand, the police arrested both Maje and Salva. After his arrest, Salva remained loyal to Maje. He took full responsibility for the murder, insisting that he acted alone and that Maje had nothing to do with it. Maje, on the other hand, claimed Salva was a deranged stalker who had threatened her into giving him the garage keys. She denied any involvement in planning the murder. But Salva's loyalty didn't last long. When he found out that Maje had continued her affairs with other men even after Arturo's death, he felt betrayed. Realizing he had been used, Salva changed his story. He told the police everything: how Maje had manipulated him, lied about Arturo being abusive, and pushed him to commit murder under false pretense. With his cooperation, Salva received a reduced prison sentence of 17 years. Maje, exposed as the mastermind behind the murder, was sentenced to 22 years in prison. Her calculated manipulation, emotional deceit, and cold-blooded orchestration of her husband's death shocked even the most seasoned investigators. The emotional toll of the case ultimately led Inspector Eva to resign from the crime investigation unit. Disillusioned by the darkness she had witnessed, Eva left behind her career as a detective and joined the police patrol, seeking some form of peace after such a haunting and tragic case.